Yes. Oh, yes.
How do you convince that person that it also says that we're supposed to till and keep, which also means we're supposed to take care of?
Yes.
So how would you create a conversation?
What's your name?
Nathan.
Nathan? Nathan, maybe you can send the mic over and he'll figure out what to do. Nathan's question, for those of you who couldn't hear, really, really important. Nathan's question is, a lot of people, as soon as you talk about the environment, they pull out a Bible verse from Genesis 1, that man was created to have dominion. And then they interpret that to mean, so you aren't supposed to care for the environment, you're supposed to rape it. And do whatever you want for it. You know, I just wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago, and a really big political website had this really angry article written in response. And this is exactly the line of thought. God created the world for us. I mean, doesn't that sound unbelievably selfish and immature, you know? But at any rate, what I would do is a couple of things. First, exactly as you said, I'd point out in Genesis 2, because people like to quote Genesis 1 and not quote Genesis 2. Genesis 1, it says, have dominion over. Genesis 2, it says, God put man in the garden to till it and care for it, to nurture it and serve it. Actually, the Hebrew word that's used there is also used for what we do for God. We serve God. We actually are supposed to serve, care for the planet. So I would say, you don't want to read Genesis 1 without Genesis 2. But then I go back to Genesis 1 and even look at that word dominion. Because when human beings are created in the image of God, I think what that's suggesting is God is the king over the world. And we are then like vice kings over the world. We're supposed to be images of God's kingship over the world. So we should exercise dominion over the world that reflects the kind of dominion that God exerts over the world. So, does God rape the world? No. Does God throw the world into imbalance? No. Does God exploit the world? No. God keeps the world working in beautiful balance. So our dominion should be godly dominion, not satanic dominion. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, Jesus said. So if we exercise a dominion that plunders, kills, destroys, we're not imaging God, we're imaging something else. So that's the direction I would go with a person who said something like that. But I'd also be aware that the people who say that sort of thing don't realize the degree to which they've learned to read the Bible from within a domination framing story. And to just point out one verse doesn't help them, because it's like their whole way of seeing the world is through that domination story. And so I wouldn't expect it to make much difference. What I would expect them is for them to go and write a blog post saying that I'm a heretic and heathen, and that's what they'll do to you if you say that sort of thing. But you still do it because it's the right thing to do. And you don't get mad, you just keep saying the right thing. Keep speaking the truth no matter what happens. Just one other quick example. I just have a New Testament up here. Does anybody have a whole Bible you could close that Bible you could give me? Great, thanks. But if you've got a Bible, this is worth pulling out, okay? Look at Deuteronomy chapter 15. And because the other question that's very related to the one that we just heard, that I always hear, it's the parallel one. This is about the planet crisis, but if we go to the equity system, the poverty crisis, people always say to me, didn't Jesus say, the poor you will have with you always? As if to say, you better not help the poor or you'll make Jesus a liar. Like we're really in danger. There's only a few poor people left. Don't help them or Jesus will be a liar. It's kind of weird, but people always quote that. And it's just like this, they've been taught. It's like watching, how when you hit somebody on that little thing there, whatever you call it,
Patella.
What is it? Somebody's patellar ligament, yeah. And, it's like this reaction. As soon as you mention the planet, they say, what about dominion? And as soon as you mention poverty, they say, what about the poor you will have with you always? Well, what is nice to point out to people is that Jesus is quoting the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15. Look at the very end of the chapter, and there you'll see those words. Not the very end of the chapter, verse 11. There will always be poor people in the land. But then what I'd really like to do is point out to people, let's read the verse before and the verse after. Verse 10, give generously to your poor neighbor, and do so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land. Whoops. But it's not done yet. Go to the beginning of Deuteronomy 15 and look at verse 4. However, there should be no poor among you. For in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess as your inheritance, he will richly bless you if you only will fully follow, be careful to follow, fully obey the Lord your God and be careful to follow all these commands. For the Lord your God will bless you as he's promised, and you will lend from many nations but will borrow from none. So what he's saying is, listen, it's a bountiful land. The world is full of blessing. There's enough to go around. There shouldn't be any poor people, but there are going to be. So be sure you're generous if you want to be one of God's people. So that's the kind of thing, I think. But one of our problems is people are so well trained, they've been taught which verses to read and which verses not to read about these things. Another question or comment? Yes?
You mentioned earlier that you had a friend who was autonomous that was part of the Obama team.
Yes.
I'm wondering if through him or some other clandestine way you have some way to get this kind of message
Yeah.
into the White House.
Well, it's interesting. I'm just kind of a normal everyday loser, but it so happens that the guy who's the head of the White House's faith-based initiatives, he was just named a week or so ago, Joshua Dubois, is a guy who contacted me some years ago because he read a book I wrote called The New Kind of Christian, and it really helped him. So he has read a lot of my books, and so there were those possibilities. It was also interesting, somebody gave a copy of this book, Everything Must Change, to Kevin Rudd, who's the new Prime Minister of Australia, and I was told that he bought like 20 copies and gave them to to his whole staff last year for Christmas. So this sort of thinking is starting to get out there. It's, I think it's exciting. The apparatus and obstacles are so strong, but it's like a change in view that's happening, and it's a different way of being a Christian, to think that to follow Jesus means I follow Jesus in a way that doesn't help me be vacuumed out of this world and beamed up to heaven. It's not just about that. It's about heaven is getting its influence felt down here on earth. And through government, that's one, but also through business and the arts and every dimension, medicine, every dimension of life. So, all the way in the back, yes?
Do you feel that starting up green jobs in that environmental process will really make a deep impact in changing the system?
Yeah, the question is, do I think that emphasizing green jobs will make a difference? I really do. This is one of the things I'm really hopeful about and excited about, and I hope a lot of you who are students will devote yourselves to. Let me tell you something a guy said to me. When I was researching this book, I met this guy who's a venture capitalist, and there's this whole group of venture capitalists who are raising money for socially responsible businesses. And he said to me, we have made billions of dollars destroying the earth over the last 300 years. We'll make trillions of dollars healing the earth in the next 300 years. Now, at first I said, boy, that sounds greedy, but I think what he means is this. In God's world, it should be more profitable to heal than to destroy long term. And I think that there's so much power and so much potential in this. And so this to me